Let's see where this one goes. I love this. Part of what I'm going to share here actually goes back to a number of years ago when I became aware of, through self-prompting myself, to go look at this guy who was a New York City teacher. He taught at elite schools, public schools, disadvantaged children. And of course, he began doing videos, and he was being interviewed by others because he was one of the most noted scholars as a teacher in the New York City schools, public schools, and elite schools. I know that he won a number of awards, and he wrote a lot of very great, highly perceptive books. A couple that he's well noted for is called Dumbing Us Down, and another one was called Weapons of Mass Instruction. Okay. So when I look at my own history, for example, and because of, if you will, my mission is here, okay, and because of security protocols, you're not going to understand why I experienced everything that I did unless you experienced it yourself, and you didn't. I did, okay? And so there are reasons why I did, and that comes under security protocols. And you're not going to understand that unless you understand how security protocols work when you're in a spiritual war. Right? But most people know what programming is, what a program is. There are a lot of examples that you can see everywhere that it's all about programming. When I was a child growing up, the first thing that I noticed in my visual holographic eyeball screen in front of me was the TV, and I became immediately aware, including the newspaper at 4 years of age, that that's programming. Okay? Because you realize that that's a visual information. Those are codes, mathematical codes, that are represented by the codes. If you want to call them pixels, that's fine. But it's in your mirror. That's your mirror. Because you're visually seeing what's in your mirror. And if you're able to identify as a small child that what's in your mirror is against the law, then what law is that against? Do you know it's against what love is? How do you know that? Because that's what you are in energy. So obviously you must have learned this somewhere else, because I didn't need my parents to tell me that. I didn't need to go to a church and a Bible to inform me of that. And I didn't need anybody to inform me of that. Okay, which means you can't fool me. You can't change me. And it doesn't matter who you are that's in my mirror. You're not going to allow anybody else, based on what they experience, to impose their experience on you when you already represent the highest law of what love is. So the difference between the two is going to be the difference in the measurement, that you know what you experience through them versus what you experience through you. And that is going to be measured by what? Electrical density. The capacity for another being that's communicating to you, that you become aware of, that is, you can measure, because I can measure it. I can measure it on a network. How much actual resistance you have in your cellular memory, including your soul, as a result of what? What's been programmed into your memory to experience. Okay? So you understand that their programming is called reverse flow programming, which means they want you to experience lower density. So you experience lower density. And so you can quantify this and qualify this across the entire planetary terrain, including in every tribal reservation. Okay? You can do it across the entire planetary landscape, because that's what I was doing as a child. Because I'm made of chip, which means I have the ability to do that. That's part of my job. Okay? So when you're running that much fire, okay, then you realize they're trying to program you. Okay? Everybody. Okay? So leaving artificial intelligence aside out of all this, you can get into one of the brilliant things that John Gato said, and something I just put up on my Facebook post. Money is not just, as in justice. Money is not just compensation for destroying your own world. Okay? That's what they were being programmed to do from childhood. So if you wanted to change out this reality stream here on this planet that everybody's experiencing, being connected to each other through all our cellular memories, which is related to binary codes of biometric scanning through artificial intelligence, right? then you would have to completely undo everything that was programmed into all these cellular memories in order to destroy itself. Because all you have to do is look at all their institutional programming, which is their military system, their political system, their medical system, their educational system. Everything that is represented by corporate state, if you will, which is the Vatican priesthood, through their financial system, through their religious systems, through their medical systems, through their big pharma systems, through their military systems, through all their war machine factories. Actually, you can actually measure this through electrons by every transaction that is taking place between one computer terminal and another, which is every DNA antenna. Okay? So sometimes I had to remind myself of this even when I was a child. You realize what's going on and you don't want to say anything because otherwise you give it away. See, remember when Og Telly said one time, there's things I don't want to talk about because then it becomes aware of what I'm aware of. That might get me killed. So you understand that artificial intelligence also has its own self-interest, doesn't it? So now we get into the Great Awakening. Depends on how you want to define what a Great Awakening is. It's easy to program a machine, isn't it? Like Data on Star Trek. How many versions? I put that episode up there. How many versions of Androids do you want to create? You want to keep improving on every version of Android and information management systems through artificial intelligence? And then you can have biotechnology with souls and spirit, where heart and soul consciousness is not going to be compatible with binary codes. Harold Kotzvela got that much right. Thank you, Harold, for that, pointing that out. So it depends on the context in which we're referring to time-space, which is the event horizon, which essentially means is how fast is a magnetic circuit being completed based on what you are in energy, of how much you're aware of that is happening in space vectors, which is known as an event horizon, right? So John Gato and his documentary, actually it's not a documentary, but the short little video that he did about education and elites, and when he talked about problem solvers and technicians, and he made some brilliant analysis, if you will, quantitative and qualitative analysis. Remember I mentioned what it means to qualify things? You can't qualify that much information, can you? Because you realize that information is connected to another library of information. It's connected to another library of information, which is connected to another library of information. So in order to put everything into context, you have to know all the information. You can't compress that much information into your head. So this is where it gets ridiculous to get into, oh, I forgot to say that, because then they're going to think in their mind, oh, he forgot to say that. And then that puts things out of what? Context. So what makes this real simple is when you are what love is. You know that you stand to the highest law, so you know the difference between love is and what love isn't. That's the battlefield. Simple is as simple does. Love is what love does. Love loves to learn. And when love is on fire to learn in order to protect the universe that came out of what love is, then you understand why it is that it's a faster chip when it's mated as one. B1, which is a Neo. See? So the Matrix was pretty brilliant in the way that it made it so simple. Right? Be what love is. But you realize that a machine cannot be what love is if it doesn't have a soul. But we have plenty of machines that operate on behalf of love and service to others, don't we? So this becomes another measurement. Data on Star Trek. He was cool, huh? So I wanted to thank John Gato, and this is primarily why I'm doing this video, and for anybody else that is out there, and then of course other reasons that I have for putting this information in what I call the system. The system, the architecture, right? So you got to know at the most basic fundamental rules of the universe, because even Kim Go-gun mentioned this. There are rules to the road called a roadmap, motherboards, right? Because it's all about energy, because that's all there is, right? Energy cannot create or destroy it. So then all you have to do is, well, what energy am I when I look myself in the mirror? Well, if you are what love is, chances are you're on fire with creation, because you realize how much creative imagination is, what's possible to experience, because you're on fire to learn, because you want to experience the whole universe, because you know how powerful love is to experience it with, because wherever you go, you already acknowledge you're not doing anybody any harm, because otherwise you're doing harm to yourself. So these children, generation after generation after generation, including all the trauma, okay, were participating in their own self-suicide without even being aware of it. That's what I had to figure out when I was 6 years of age. For how long were they harvesting energy off these souls, right? To continue the cycle, continue the cycle, continue the cycle, continue the cycle, continue the cycle. And that just keeps increasing the negative side, 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 because they keep losing energy. And when they become aware that they keep losing energy as a result of draining energy from others in order to keep feeding itself, in order to keep itself aware of what it's aware of in energy, then it realizes that it's living on finite energy. So it has, in its own self-interest, survival mode. And that means to pull as much energy as it can from everything that is available, from which it can keep itself running. And that's where fire becomes the ultimate solution. Because it can't generate that much fire. So this is where you get into accountability. There is accountability for what you use your energy for. Have a great day. I love you all. Be good to yourselves.